This video is sponsored by you guys. If you like to ride party pace and want to support the channel, check out our new stem caps in our web store, link in the description below. From a distance, gravel bikes and drop bar mountain bikes look really similar. Both have drop bars, both have room for fat meats. Is the only difference really marketing? Well, not quite. In this video, I'm going to do a deep, nerdy dive into the difference between gravel / all-road bikes and drop bar mountain bikes. Probably the most noticeable area of difference is going to be in tire clearance. Generally speaking, all road bikes have more clearance than a pure road bike, so these bikes will be able to clear tires in the 700 to 45, maybe even 50 range, or 650B by 48, or if you want to talk in mountain biking terms, 27.5 by 2.1, sometimes 2.3. So pretty wide when you compare it to a pure road bike, which typically has clearance for only 700 by 30, or even some pure cyclocross bikes, which per UCI rules can only run tires that are 33.3 millimeters wide. Looking at drop bar mountain bikes, however, tire clearance gets even bigger. Most drop bar mountain bikes have a minimal tire clearance of 2.3 inches. That's about 50 millimeters. Bikes like the Otto, which I recently reviewed back here, can run 29 by 2.5 inch tires or 650B by 2.8. Damn, you can even fit a 3-inch wide tire in the front. So while all-road bikes have pretty good tire clearances, the drop bar mountain bike definitely has more tire clearance for bigger and juicier meats. Another telltale indicator, which is mostly true, not 100% of the time, but is a general rule, is if you look at the top tube of the bike. Most gravel / all-road bikes still conform to traditional road bike shape, and by that I mean a generally level top tube, if not slightly sloping. Drop bar mountain bikes, however, take more cues from the mountain biking world, so you'll see more extremely sloping top tubes, which I think gives you two distinct advantages. The first one is if you're riding on super technical terrain and you have to dab your foot, you can be less worried about punching your crotch with the bike. Because of lack of standover height, it's a little bit more forgiving. In the same vein, the sloping top tube means more exposed seat tube, which means you can run a dropper post. This is useful because it lets you tuck in on rough and chonky descents and lets you get behind the saddle on steep descents. And if you have to dab, you can lower the seat really quickly so you're not, again, punching your crotch. Something you generally want to avoid when riding bikes and I think life in general. Pro tip. The next big difference between these two styles of bikes is going to be the geometry. I took a small sampling of bikes to see if there was a general trend. So new bikes that you guys are probably interested in, as well as bikes that I've personally ridden. So things like the new Specialized Kruk, the Bearclaw Thunderhawk, the Crust Bambora, the Salsa Warbird, which was kind of the first gravel race bike, the Tumbleweed Stargazer, the Salsa Fargo, and the Otto Fenrir, which I have behind me here. Looking at gravel and all-road bikes, their geo numbers fall within a specific range. As a quick note, I know it's generally bad form to just isolate one geometry number in a vacuum because there are many things that contribute to how a bike rides. But for the sake of simplicity, that's what I'm going to kind of do in this video. First off, looking at their head tube angles, they tend to usually range between 70 and 72 degrees. This is a little bit slacker than pure road bikes and cyclocross bikes, but still within that spectrum of a road or endurance road bike. The more important number is the trail, in my opinion, which is a function of the head tube angle, the fork offset, and the outside tire diameter. Looking at this, again, you find a majority of them fall within a specific range, mid-60s to mid-70s. Pure road bikes tend to fall in the 55 to mid-60 range. So we can see gravel and all-road bikes have a slightly higher trail. And as you know, if you've spent any time on the channel, the higher the trail, the more stable the front end is going to feel. And this makes sense. This is a quality that you would want going down rocky descents. The other geometry number I like to look at is chainstay length. This is another good predictor of how the bike is going to generally handle. And again, you see these exist within a fairly narrow range, usually from 425 to 430. So the racier the bike, they tend to be shorter, and the more all-rounder the bike, they tend to be a little bit longer. But with these examples, they don't pass that 430 threshold. Now let's take a look at drop bar mountain bikes. This is where things get pretty interesting. You can see almost all the head tube angles are below 70. They're 69, 68, and those head tube angles usually translate into higher trail numbers. In the case of drop bar mountain bikes, the trail usually starts in the upper 80s and goes into the 90s, as opposed to the all-road bikes, which stayed in the 60s and 70s. Looking at the chainstay length, we see a big difference again. The chainstay length ranges are from 450 to 460. Some with a sliding dropout will go from 430 to 450, but the general trend is definitely longer than the 430, which we saw in gravel/all-road bikes. Another number I highlighted was stack. Most drop bar mountain bikes are going to have more stack than all-road bikes in equivalent sizes. What this means is that it will sit you a little bit more upright. It'll put a little bit less weight on the front wheel. So although the bike has high trail, you're not preloading it with your body weight, and this in turn makes the steering feel a little bit lighter. Okay, so let's jump out of the spreadsheet and back to English. What do these numbers mean in terms of how the bike actually feels like? So all-road bikes will generally handle like relaxed road bikes. Some will have higher stack, some will have slightly higher trail, but they'll still be pretty responsive in a road bike kind of way. And because of that, I think they do best on roads. No surprise. Yes, you can take them on trails and single track, but I think the geometry does lend itself more to road riding. Looking at drop bar mountain bikes, probably not a surprise here, but they're gonna ride like mountain bikes with drop bars. But what does that mean? What does mountain bike handling actually mean? Let's say you've never ridden a mountain bike, have no point of reference. How is it going to be different from that all-road bike? One pretty obvious difference, which isn't geometry related, is weight. Drop bar mountain bikes, in my experience, are going to typically weigh more than a all-road gravel bike. Part of that could be from beefed up tubing, but I think a large part of that is going to be the extra meats on the bigger tires. Weight aside, the front end handling is going to be a little bit of a different experience as well. Generally speaking, it's going to feel more stable, slightly slower to steer, and maybe a touch less squirrely or responsive. Again, painting with big broad strokes here. This front end handling is ideal when you're going to go down super chunky stuff most of the time. It's going to feel more stable at speed. It's going to take a little bit more body English to redirect. If you hit a root or a rock, it's not going to deflect the wheel and throw you off course as easily. All good things. But what are the downsides of a geometry like this? In my experience so far, most of the drop bar mountain bikes I've tried aren't my favorite climbing bikes. That's not to say that they're objectively or empirically worse, but they're different from what I'm used to and what I prefer. The higher weight definitely contributes to this, but also that high trail handling does take some getting used to. If you're climbing really steep stuff at slow speeds, the bike has a tendency to wander and you really have to work to keep it straight. You do get used to it, but if you've only been riding city bikes or road bikes, it does take some adjustment. Again, neither good nor bad, just different. So now to the big question, which is better? I'm going to give you guys a really disappointing answer and say neither, and it really depends on where you're going to ride the bikes and how you ride. If you live in the city and you want a bike that you can use for commuting on pavement with some occasional dirt road excursions, I definitely think that the all-road or gravel bike is the better bike in this instance. The handling of the bike won't feel so alien, and if you swap out the tires for something a little bit slicker, then that would make a pretty efficient commuter bike in my experience. For me, if a ride includes lots of pavement, and by a lot, I mean more than half the ride, then I would definitely prefer a gravel or all-road bike. However, if you ride in mostly dirt roads, take a lot of trails, you're riding B roads that are rutted and muddy and have tank traps, then the drop bar mountain bike is the better choice. It won't be as fun to ride on those paved sections, but it will feel way more capable when things get really sloppy and rough. And I know you can ride either bike on either terrain, just like you can use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail if you wanted, I guess. If I had to personally choose one or the other for the place where we live and the type of riding that I do most of the time, I would probably lean towards the all-road bike. That said, riding all these drop bar mountain bikes has piqued my curiosity, and I think I'm going to add one to the stable. Have not decided which one yet, but I think I will pull the trigger on one either this year or maybe next year. But that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think. Which bike do you gravitate more towards? The gravel/all-road bike or the drop bar mountain bike? If you found this video helpful or entertaining, consider supporting the channel by joining us on Patreon, where we get lots of cool perks, or picking up one of our brand new stem caps in the store. Until next time, keep the supple side down.